Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Wagner, and I am the founder of Scribble to Form, which is a digital agency that focuses on strategy, website development, mobile app development, as well as analytics. And it's a pleasure to be here, so I really appreciate you having me. I'd love to talk to you today about analytics, and I think that initially when you talk about analytics, it can get really detailed. So what I'd like to do today, I know that you can always talk about the what, and you can talk about the why with analytics, but really I'd like to go a little bit simpler than that because I have one of the services that Scribble to Form has is strategy. With strategy, what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll spend 1 to 3 weeks at a client site, and we'll look at where they are right now, where they need to go, and the action plan that needs to happen to get them there. So when we're looking at what they're doing right now, what happens is we tend to dive really deep into their analytics. So in diving deep into the analytics, we see these same problems consistently across the board. It doesn't matter how small, how large the big is, how big the client is. A lot of these problems are pretty consistent across the board. So I'd like to address a few of them because I think they're very, you can understand them, number one. Number two, they're very relevant to you as well. So the first problem is the lack of business objectives, goals, and KPIs. Now, you always hear the word KPI, and it's always, it's kind of thrown around. A lot of times people just don't pay attention to it. But ultimately, if you don't have these three things defined, then it really kind of doesn't matter what metrics you're looking at because they're not going to make sense. So just to kind of give you, the best way to give you an example of what's going on with objectives, goals, and KPIs is just to give you an example. So the easiest way to show is through an e-commerce shop as well. So if you look at an objective, an e-commerce shop can have multiple objectives. They can have the ability to increase sales, the ability to increase readership, and a whole host of other things as well. But we'll focus really on the ability to increase sales. So increasing sales on the e-commerce website, if we define the objective, we'll say we need to increase sales in low-performing regions. That's our overall high-level overarching objective. Now, a goal could be, I want to increase sales by 50% in the southeastern states within 6 months. Now, that's a specific goal. Okay? So we have our top-line objective, and we have our goal. So now, once we have that goal, then that's actually when we can figure out which metrics that we're going to look at to help figure out if we've achieved our goals. And it's the same thing with event planners as well. It's really defining which, on your event, it's defining the objectives of not only you, but also any type of sponsors that you have, defining what the goals are, and then in addition, once you have the goals, defining the metrics that you need to set up to watch to make sure that you hit all of your goals. And when you do that, you get on the same page with your sponsors. In addition to that, you also find new ways that you can go back to them the next year to increase the budget and figure out how to make more money for yourself as well. So going back to my example with the sales, once you've defined the goal of saying, hey, we want to increase in the southeastern states. We want to increase sales by 50% within 6 months. So then I've defined my KPIs. My KPIs are specific metrics, right, that are smart. Smart metrics allow you to make good decisions. Honestly, think of analytics as fuel for what you're doing. You're taking, I think Mickey had in the 2 panels ago, or in the last panel, had the perfect statement in saying, I've seen events happen, and I honestly don't know how you do it, but you always look so stoic in the midst of all this chaos that's going on, and it's just amazing to me. So you put all this hard work into what you're doing, your brands and your sponsorships and all the speakers and all the exhibitors, everybody appreciates it. So you might as well use these analytics to help fuel yourself to actually, evolve what you're doing so that the next time you can make more money. An example with events, and I'm going to keep this very high level because for me it's not the specific metrics, it's actually the concepts behind the metrics. Metrics can really be different for everybody in this room. If you have one specific event, or actually if you have 2 specific events, the metrics could be completely different between those 2 specific events. So for me to take time to explain what's valuable and what you should be looking at for a specific event That's just a lot longer than 20 minutes. And honestly, it takes a lot of time to figure out what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, to actually figure out the metrics that you should be looking at. But to take a very high-level approach with this in terms of an event, you could say that there's 3 very high-level objectives. With those objectives could be increase in attendance, it could be awareness, and it also could just be increase in satisfaction, right? Satisfaction of the people there. Increase in satisfaction is that's usually done after the event, post-event surveys and things like that. But if you have those 3 types of objectives, remember, we're just trying to keep it very simple. Ultimately, what you want to do is you have a goal. So a goal could be for our attendance, we want to increase the attendance by 30%. We want to have, for our satisfaction levels, a goal is we need for everybody to be at a defined happiness level, which we'll have within our questions within the survey. So those were our goals to actually hit our objectives. And then what those goals are happening, I mean, for the attendance, obviously that's pretty simple, right? The amount of people who attend. The KPIs would be the amount of people who attend the event. But in addition, when you're looking at the satisfaction, it could be, you can have questions tailored on that post-event survey. And again, all these questions should contribute to your overarching objectives and goals of the event that you've defined. So your question in that post-event survey could be, what was your happiest level? And it could be with, specific exhibitors. It could be within a space that you have. It could be all these various things. But ultimately, that question should allow you to come up with the API and allow you to understand whether you've hit your goal or not. And honestly, analytics, this is really the very beginning of it. I mean, that's the initial thing that needs to happen. If you don't do that, then what you're looking at is bounce rates, uniques, and page views in terms of website stuff. And then, you've got your other statistics in terms of our analytics, in terms of social media as well. But it doesn't become valuable until you're able to map those into your overall objectives and goals. So the example with the satisfaction levels was just to ensure people were above average. And then with the KPI was to define within those questions what their level was in terms of satisfaction within that. And that will allow you to understand how you've achieved those goals. Now, we've done, I've never planned an event, but I've seen many events planned before. We've done something with a She Summit, which is a women's empowerment conference. And we've had multiple goals. This year it was a 2-day conference. Last year it was a 1-day conference. But ultimately, there's tons of speakers. And the first year in 2012 is in terms of social media, because the brand was new. From a social media standpoint, one of the goals was to increase the followers, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, all these things like that. Once the 2012, that was the initial idea. Now, 2013, we felt good with the amount of followers that we had. And again, not diving too far deep into the strategy, but once we have all these people, we know that we don't need, at this point, we're not really focused on increasing our followers. At this point, we want to increase our reach and our engagement with our fans. So what we did is there's multiple things that we did. You obviously use a hashtag, which Liz has for the event, and you can leverage hashtags. What we also used as well was a service, an agency. They're called Swig Social, and they're actually recommended to us by Liz. And they're an absolutely amazing group. It's a husband and wife, and the husband was there. And he took all these great photographs of what was going on with the event. He put them out through Twitter, and so we increased our engagement with that and our reach within that hashtag. And then in addition to that, it really captured that experience, because that's one thing that we saw with the previous event for 2012. The experience for that event, we wanted to not only enhance the experience for people there, but we also wanted to enhance it for people who weren't there. So by getting these amazing photographs and being able to share them on social media, the amount of traction that She Summit got was far and above more than anything that had gotten in the previous year. So just an example of really defining, before you can move forward and really understanding how you're going to implement a strategy from an event standpoint, it's really understanding what your overall objective and goals are, and then aligning what you want to do and what you want to measure from an analytics standpoint to ensure whether you've either hit that goal or you haven't. So now there is, from a current standpoint, I think that in terms of analytics, there is, in measuring, it's really tough right now to measure things like happen online. I mean, sorry, at events, at the live events. It's really, this is evolving, and I'll get to the solutions. I mean, one of them we saw earlier, Double Dutch, was a great solution. But right now, I feel like it's at this initial point of really for people trying to understand how to capture the analytics of what's going on at events. That emotional factor, that engagement, all these different things, all these different metrics, they're really tough to understand. You can get a beat on it through social media, but for right now, what we tend to do is focus, and everybody's different, but we tend to focus on what people are doing from a digital standpoint. And that's either through social, that's through email, that's through your website, that's through any mobile apps. And I think by focusing on those, because those you can actually get these metrics and understand. If you're selling tickets through your website, I think that you can leverage those analytics that you have from an email marketing standpoint. Let's say you send off your initial blast. You can determine how many people come from which email, come to your website, and eventually ultimately purchase tickets. And that's important because then you can tailor and you can optimize your email campaigns from that point as well. So I think that while right now in the current stage that we're at, I think that we're trying to evolve what we're doing at live events. There's the ability, and remember, an event is, and as you know, an event is not just this one specific offline event. It's the story and the engagement and the journey of the user from the very first email that they get to all the social media campaigns, to all those other contests and sweepstakes promotions, to even post-event surveys or content that you do. So it's really measuring all these different things and allowing all these measurement and statistics to actually make sense and really allow you to ultimately achieve your goals. So the first issue was the goals, objectives, and KPIs. The second issue that we commonly see when we take a look at analytics is the ability to structure URLs. This is getting a little specific, but I think it's very pertinent. If nobody understands what a UTM code is or what campaign tracking is, I would suggest taking a look at that the next time you have an event. So what that would allow you to do, UTM codes are specific to Google Analytics, which I'm assuming a lot of people use in the room. But what that will allow you to do is it will allow you to understand who comes to the website and how they come and which marketing channel that they come to the website and which marketing channel is most effective in actually allowing people to purchase tickets. So the example of that is you've got all these marketing channels that are going. You've got multiple campaigns. You've got multiple emails. You've got social media going out. You've got contests and sweepstakes. You've got all these myriad of marketing things that you spend a lot of time and money into. But ultimately, if you don't define the URL correctly and how people get to your website to either purchase tickets or do different things, you're not going to know which one's the most effective. So the second issue is defining what your campaign, your UTM codes are within your links. And it's just very important because once you do that, you actually you don't need to be an expert at this point to understand what's going on with your analytics, but you're setting your analytics up to be correctly analyzed by somebody who could really help out. So I would strongly suggest you look at UTM codes and understand how to define links to allow people to go back to your website, because it's just really important. You want to know which campaign was the most effective. You want to know which email or social campaign or even a Facebook ad drove people to purchase tickets, for your event. So that allows you to fully understand how you're generating revenue. Now, from the future standpoint, I think that as these tools evolve, I think one of the main things that we're going to see, and the bridge that's going to allow us to evolve the offline events and allow us to get a lot of these analytics, is the mobile phones, mobile apps. I think you've got Bisubu, you've got Double Dutch, which are two really great apps that allow you that kind of give you and enhance that experience when you're actually at the event. But at the same time, not only is it enhance the experience for the people at the event, but behind the scenes, you're actually getting all this information on, who's interacting with what, where they're interacting, because you have the ability to leverage the GPS, and at the same time, we just saw within Double Dutch, the ability to almost do this loyalty platform where you can earn points by doing specific things at events. All this stuff is tracked up in the cloud. It's all tracked up in what's in their system, and it's really going to allow you this in-depth engagement on how people are engaging offline at your live event. So the other thing that I think is important in terms of looking at analytics is the ability to take analytics across platforms. So as I talked about, you've got these goals and objectives, you've defined your URLs, but now you've got all these analytics absolutely everywhere. So in the future, I think it's going to be very important to take all these analytics, because everything right now is completely siloed. When you look at all these tools that are out there to allow you to see how you're doing, it's either on social media, or it's either on email, or you're going to Facebook, and it's very siloed. So I think what you'll see is the ability for all these tools to aggregate all these analytics and to really give you a clear-cut picture of how your campaigns are doing. And it's actually something that we're doing right now. We're building a product called Scribble Analytics that really aggregates all this information, and on top of it, it provides you with a score. So it's like, hey, you've got a B+, and it's the old school report card. So it'll be like, you've got a B+ in your target analytics. You've got an A in your email marketing, your social media, you've got a D, but like on top of it, your web metrics are set up properly, they're doing well, and we focus on the specific metrics that are very relevant to you. And I think that's another takeaway that we've learned, is that there's a million metrics out there that you can look at that are very applicable to you. Some applicable, some not. But I think at this point, I think it's to break it down to between like 4 and 6 metrics that really make sense to you. That's what we do as a service-oriented company. Is we go and we tell people, these are the 4 metrics that you should be focused on. And that's what we're doing within our product as well, because at the end of the day, you don't really have to worry about bounce rate if you want people to buy a ticket. I mean, who cares if the bounce rate's 80% when 80% of the people through this one funnel are actually purchasing tickets. So understanding what metrics are going to contribute to your KPIs are very important, and only focus on a few of them. And that's what we're trying to do with Scribble Analytics as well. So I realize that analytics is kind of not the sexy thing that's out there, and there's probably a lot more fun things that are being talked about here. But at the end of the day, it's, again, that fuel that's going to allow you to ultimately understand how your events worked, how your campaigns are performing, and ultimately how you can make more money as well. So we've got a few minutes left, so does anybody have any questions? Okay, so I'll be in the back if anybody has any questions and around, walking around. So please come up and introduce yourself and let me know if you have a question. Thanks a lot.